Perfect. So today we are on our chapter 11 for social media optimization. And there's going to be quite a bit of information, and we're probably, because we kind of harped on a lot of these in DM150, we might not need to leverage a ton of time to the different types of social medias that we see, because we kind of already have an idea of how they operate. But the main thing here is we want to figure out the social media marketing aspect that we learned from DM150 and compare it to social media optimization. I remember you can call this SMO. It's a bit different from the SEO, but we're still optimizing our media content to go ahead and make it optimal for the searchers. And again, they call it SMO throughout the PowerPoint here. So just as a reminder, this is social media optimization. And of course, we're going to go through some strategies and optimization methods. There's a nice video here that I would recommend watching if you just wanted to have another person speak a bit about the differences. But essentially what we're doing here is we're going to go ahead and try to determine what type of media what type of strategy we would use for social media. And the reason why we want to determine a strategy is we have four really kind of large items here. But essentially what happens is one of the main priorities here is it's going to match our digital channels to consumer behaviors. And what that means is this could mean a lot of things, essentially. But it's important because you're kind of going to be able to go with the tide of things. So if something's more popular and you're on that trend yourself, you're going to definitely increase your sales and your business revenue. And the most important thing here, and we saw this in DM150 as well, is how we're going to separate things that we should be doing from things that we can do. Because if we remember, we said that we have like 9 or 10 really viable social media aspects. But the problem with that is that there's, there's only so much we can do with each of them. If we do all 10, we'll definitely get burnt out in our company. It's going to go ahead, and the strategy for social media is going to define the role of our brand's digital experience. And what that means is that the brand is going to be a part of the user's life in some way. And then, of course, this also allows us to have a certain way that we act in the different digital spaces. And you might see this a few times, like digital sphere and digital spaces. That's essentially just using the phones and the technology to communicate with your consumers. Great. So the framework for our strategy that we could go through here, and again, this is going to be a bit of a culmination of areas from DM150 and a lot of stuff we've seen in there, and also some areas of DM160 where we see how we optimize our strategy. We're always going to want to try to start off with our brand and how we're going to view it, and this is like the first lesson from DM150. If we remember, we always want to start off with the brand and figure out what we're going to build up upon with it. We're also going to need some objectives to create our strategy or our framework with. We need to figure out, okay, what can I actually accomplish for my business to be successful? This could be very in-depth with saying you want to reach a certain amount of, it could be a bit more basic, like I want to sell 100 items of my product by the end of the month. That could be an objective that you have. And another objective could be I want to sell 100 items and then have around 40 new followers or something, you know? Those are small objectives, but the problem with not having objectives that you can reach in a certain amount of time is that you're going to be kind of doing too much all at once. So you want to make sure that you set solid objectives to follow. And that's just like good general advice, I think, for most things. And then, of course, for the framework, we're going to figure out what the user needs. So there are personal goals. Again, this is similar to DM150s when we talked about try to make sure that there's a problem for the users so that you can solve the problem for it. So you want to figure out the needs of the users. And, of course, once you figure out the need and the objectives of your of what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to try to figure out how your brand behaves between two of them. So how is your brand going to fulfill the user's needs? And how is it going to achieve the objectives we saw? We're also going to figure out our content, which is something that is going to kind of grow and is malleable in a way, or it keeps shifting while we're developing our brand and our items here. And then our partnerships as well. Partnerships are something that we've seen quite a bit before. Partnerships could be between different influencers who are in a similar area as you, or essentially just people that can help your brand create and distribute content. And then finally, after you have everything built up here, you're going to see an ecosystem where the consumer and essentially how your brand, or excuse me, the consumer and brand are interacting with each other. And then you can see how it's impacting the consumer. Now, there's a lot of different aspects of it, and this all seems a bit like kind of theoretical on the high end. But the main things that we kind of want to look at are different strategies for the optimization of our social media content to figure out how it can work into that framework we just saw. So again, the areas that we saw that were pretty important is figuring out the user's needs, then also figuring out, excuse me, how we can sell our product pretty much. Now, again, this stuff is very, I would say, coming from the tools and stuff from yesterday, it's a bit more theoretical for right now. But I think that these practices, once they're kind of put into what it looks like, is a bit more under or digestible, in my opinion. So some social media content that we can make are some that are instructional. Excuse me. What this essentially means is that your content for your product could be an instructional one. Let's just say that you're selling cleaning supplies. You could show different ways to clean different areas of the house. And let's just say that you're selling a new chip or a product for technology people. You could show a way of setting it up as well. So instructional content lets the users, it's not only valuable to them to see what to do with the product, but it also is something that people, I would say, watch quite a bit, even if it's not directly influencing them. Inspirational is another solid one. This could be a way that you could inspire your consumers or go ahead and get them motivated to keep going. This is probably going to be really good if you're a fitness center or you're selling some type of energy product or anything along the lines of that. Making sure that people are inspired to keep going will also let them keep using your product or being involved with your brand or company. So that's always a solid way as well. Excuse me. And the next one, which might be a bit rougher, I always saw that these ones always were a bit fishy, but the emotional ones are always the solid ones as well. I'm sure a few of us have probably saw like the animal shelter stuff and the abuse as well. Those ads online are always containing information, or sorry, it always kind of pulls at the heartstrings of it, and essentially that's kind of the area that you want to go to, right? Now, emotional doesn't need to be necessarily like a very sad, like the world is terrible type of thing. Emotional could just be something where it shows, like, as we see here, a happy family or anything like that as well. So anything that can pull on the heartstrings or evoke an emotion from the user is another way that we can brand our content for optimize social media content. Excuse me, everyone. Sorry. Now, insightful is a new way. Excuse me. This you might have seen a few of these before, but essentially what happens here is we go ahead and excuse me, we go ahead and just share a bit of insight that we have from before. Now, this is a bit similar to instructional, but the problem with instructional, or excuse me, the difference between instructional and insightful is that insightful is kind of a bit more high end. Just like, for instance, if you put away phones during dinner time or anything, that's a bit of an insight, and we could see how it changes the persona, or excuse me, it changes how we operate during dinner if we put away the phones. But instructional is going to be always reliant on like XYZ creates this. So instructional is definitely a set of instructions. Insightful isn't instructional. It's just a way to like show off a new way to look at things pretty much. Now, testimonial is something that we've seen before. Testimonial is essentially just a review of something. As we can see here, there's a testimonial that is talking about their hairstyle, and that is just another way that you could go ahead and put these about your business or your brand so that you can get more reviews and see, or excuse me, so consumers can see what you're all about. And if we remember this here, These are the call to actions that we recall from DM150. It's been a while since we saw the call to actions, but as just a reminder, as you can see here, this one might be a bit more emotional. It has like a cute picture of a dog. It goes ahead and talks about essentially what's going on here. It's going to show off locations of the animals. And then at the very end, we have our call to action, which will essentially say something like brush up on the process of adoption and the prices for it. And then it has a link to whichever that is. So again, remember when you're making the social media content, and again, this is a bit different to what we've seen with search engine optimization. Because search engine optimization, the robots don't really need a call to action or anything. So just remember that we need a call to action when we're advertising to actual people to make sure that they know what to do and where to go. So let me just check one more. Okay. Great. So keyword and hashtags are another huge element that are important in social media, and this is probably a reiteration of a reiteration of DM150. Essentially, you're always going to want to, include whatever type of whatever type of hashtags are involved with your company. And of course, if you use more popular hashtags, that's going to increase the SEO if it's related back to your site as well. So again, if your site is using keywords, using the strategies we saw in SEO, maybe use a few of those keywords in your social media as well. I can assure you that Black Dog Gelato is a keyword on the website of the ice cream shop, and it's also a keyword, a hashtag that they use on the social media posts. So make sure that you kind of have everything into one area. Don't think that you need to restart completely when you do social media from your website. Try to have them a bit more combined so that you can work off one or the other. Great. So this one here is just for a few, tips for images. Make sure that images, if you're posting them to Instagram and anything, and again, these, this is always going to be a bit different for what you're working for, but just having interesting images and stuff like that is always interesting. And of course, maybe you'll be a mascot or anything like that as well. So there's a lot of different areas, and we can see here. Let's see here. So there's a dog, and the actual donut company asked if they could share the photo of the animal as well. So what this means is you're engaging with people who are at your shop, and you're kind of removing this level of the proper term is missing, but the you're kind of removing this barrier between the two of you if you're a consumer and a provider. So essentially what's happening here is they feel a bit more just like friendly on social media, even though this is the donut company in the image. So essentially this is a good way to show off how you can operate with other consumers and make sure that people would like to come back to your restaurant or business. Great. Tips for videos, which are always good for social media optimization as well. Make sure that you might have short and square ones if you're using like Facebook or anything like that as well. And again, this is actually similar to what we saw yesterday in the slides for search engine optimization. As we saw with some of the results from the tools, if you have too large of an image or if there's too much information on that image, it might cause a bit of drawback for your site. So even though you're not running the site and you don't, if Facebook is loading stuff slow, it might not necessarily be your problem. Kind of optimizing it and doing stuff like that is always important as well. As a reminder, make sure that you always interact with your audience if they're on social media. That just shows that you're a human and that you're not just out there for their money. So make sure that you're always interacting with the audience to ensure that they keep coming back to you. And as we could see here, we could always try to reuse the customized content there. So these are different social media links from this one. We have one for Twitter, one for Facebook, one for Instagram, and one for Pinterest, I believe, and an email newsletter right here. But we see that this is actually all just by a blog from the very start. So this is a very important way, or this is a really important idea for figuring out, okay, I have my website and I optimize my website using the techniques we learned at DM160. How do I go about branching it out to social media? Well, you don't want to just constantly repeat the same thing over and over, but definitely having up-to-date posts that are all kind of up at the same time will be really important as well. Again, try to promote your content that's on your website on other areas as well, as that will be helpful. Great. And of course, there's going to be a few ad platforms as well, so that you can go ahead and target certain areas. And again, this is something that we've learned we can kind of do for free with the keywords and stuff, as we recall. With social media, because we can't kind of jump into the back end and code up what we want to see, there's a few paid advertising excuse me, there's a few ad platforms on social media that can go ahead and do some targeting, help us with cost control and efficiencies, and then of course track results that we see as well. So I just went through quite a few bits of information there, and again, we might have seen a few of these in the DM150, but to the social media posts, or excuse me, through the strategies that we saw for posting to social media, does that make sense to everyone? It might be a bit familiar to how we see it. I think the main one I want to get across, though, because we are working with websites, is to make sure that you kind of reuse content in some areas. That doesn't mean just copy and paste it all the time. Definitely make sure the content is optimized for these certain, excuse me, these certain social media. So for instance here, if you see the Facebook post down here at the bottom left, there's actually quite a bit of information here, and it gives you a few more links. But if you go up here to the Twitter post, you'll see that there's only around a sentence or so, and then there's a link to the image as well. So what this means is that you're going to want to make sure that the content that you're reusing from your website is actually optimized for that website as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But remember that these links that are going on, I think these are called foodbabe.com. These links are also backlinks that are going to be tracked, and they're going to link back to this one, and that's going to help boost your SEO even more. So great. I just went through a lot there. Does anyone have any questions or concerns in regards to what we covered here with the social media and kind of the general idea of how to make these posts and then link them to your website? Good. And again, I know these ones are a bit more like higher. Excuse me. Sorry, but let me check one thing. This is okay. And again, always feel free to stop me if you have any questions or concerns. Great. So we just went through a lot of theoretical stuff for our social media content and how to post it. But now we're going to try to look at a few ways that we can optimize our social media, and that's by using KPIs, or key performance indicators. Once we figure out our KPIs, we can go ahead and optimize them to increase their performance as well. And KPIs can be broken down into a few areas here. What this means, excuse me, we can go ahead and determine areas that we can figure out if they've worked or not. The left tab here is essentially looking at a few of the initial stages when we're starting up. The behaviors are essentially what someone will be aware of if it's reaching them. And then another behavior is like. This could be referred to as kind of liking the page or not, or liking the post. And then the KPI, or the indicator that it's looking for, is how many likes, or the likability of the post, and then how many people this post reached as well. If you look at the followers, fans, and views, you could probably take a look at the amount of people that it's reaching. But again, that doesn't mean a ton at the same time, because sometimes there's a lot of different factors that link into the amount of followers and people we have. Another journey stage here is the active evaluation. And again, what this is here, we don't really see this in built into our programs or anything, but these are just things that the consumer is going to go through at each portion. So if the person is at the active evaluation after they've considered looking at this product, they might consider a bit more how or if they're going to get the product or not. Then they might also decide during the evaluation page if they're going to get it or not as well. And then, of course, after they go through these steps, there's going to be where they purchase the item itself. And then post-purchase, you can see that the behavior the consumer might do is they might be loyal, which pretty much means that they're going to come back to purchase more. Or they might advocate it where they go ahead and send it, or where they talk about it around to others. Now, this stuff looks a bit weird. We haven't really seen it before. The area I want to look at are the key performance indicators, and essentially these might be self-evident if we look at them. But essentially, if a consumer is considering buying a product, there's going to be indications of how they're going to look at that product. They might look at the product page quite a bit every day, and we can track that by looking at the amount of page views we have. There might be some forms or surveys that they need to fill out to buy the product, and maybe they completed all of them already. And there might be some values or other areas of consideration that we could see too. The purchase intent down here for the deciding portion of a customer's behavior is something where they might buy it right away, but instead of buying it, they might be sending out an email, or they might just be messaging you if it's like an Instagram post or anything like that says something like, I want to buy this product. Of course, these moments of purchase and post-purchase, the indicators of how they're performing, is essentially how much money is spent when they buy it. And then post-purchase indicates if they were loyal, which just means that they're going to come back to the product, or if they advocate for it, which means that they're going to talk about it to others. So now these are KPIs. The very right column is the one I want to focus on. And you can kind of see that these indicators some of them are very theoretical and high-end, but others kind of make a bit of sense, right? Like if you can tell if a customer is loyal, if they keep coming back to your site after purchasing something. So that's one way to indicate how you're performing. And there's also more ways that we could go ahead and look at a few of these items. That's by using a few of these tools here. And we saw a few of these as well, but I just want to go ahead and look at, excuse me, Google Analytics is that same type of analytical page, and this could be used for your website more often. But you could see here that you can see how many users are on your web page. You could see how many people stay there and the overall rate of their visiting. So analytics provides quite a bit of items such as the impressions on a page, which means kind of where people are going to be looking at the most. You could see what is clicked on the most as well, and you could see what is purchased as well. So Google Analytics is a great way to view how your page is going to be laid out and if it's working properly. And, excuse me, let me look up one more here. The social channel platforms, excuse me, is this another way to measure the you can kind of look at impressions on Facebook and stuff a bit easier. If your posts on Facebook are getting quite a bit of likes or views, then that's good too, and you could go from it as there as well. This is a bit explanatory, but all this is saying is that keep testing your items. If they're working, keep going with them, and if they're not working, go ahead and change them. Great. So social media is always going to be a pretty crucial part of content marketing now, as it's something that kind of goes hand in hand. But the downside of this is that social media marketing, which is something that we're going to look at now for search engine optimization, is not going to be very straightforward. And what this means is we're going to take a look at some of the key aspects on how we can use search engine optimization relevant social media to connect with a larger audience. So this is pretty much talking about how social media marketing is a bit harder to implement right away, but we are going to find a few ways to go ahead and implement it so that our items get a bit out there more often. Now, when we're using social media marketing, we don't really have access to the same amount of tools that we did with our website. So essentially, what you could do with your social media marketing is go ahead and create your brand awareness. And that pretty much means go out there and say, hey, this is my Facebook page. We do these services XYZ and so forth with that. You could try to use a few keywords in there as well, but I would say that usually just creating that awareness of what you're doing and educating target audiences about your products or services is the best way to do this as well. And again, social media marketing, this is all going to be done on like Facebook or Instagram. And because we don't have as much control over those as we do at websites, we have a bit of less free leeway to work with them. Another way that's a very important item to just remember is always interact with your current customers on any social media that you have. If they're commenting or if they're saying anything, make sure that you just interact with them and stuff and respond to their comments and then try to engage with them as well. Again, this isn't directly related to the SEO of our website, but it will help reiterate your brand's mission and how you want people to view your company. And essentially, game changing, this is a bit broad, but as general, keep your content up to date, keep people engaged, and make sure that potential customers can see your products as well. Also, as a very important thing in all of these, the best way that we can kind of get our search engine optimization working with social media is to go ahead and use some backlinks to our website. And if we remember backlinks, that's where we pretty much put the link to our website in a post. So what you could do is, let's just say that you are using the ice cream example. Let's just say on your website, you released a new ice cream flavor. On all of your social media, you can put something like, hey, I have a new ice cream flavor, and then you can link your website with the description of it right there, and then people can look at it. They will see that there's a new ice cream flavor, but they'll also look at the website as well, and that's an important way to drive traffic to your website too. If you have more traffic driven to your website through social media, what happens? Well, this will help you rank higher in the search engine results, which helps with your overall SEO. Again, these next few slides are they're pretty much stuff that we've seen already in DM150, but always try to share the content with users. Make sure that you introduce new products, as I said earlier, like with the ice cream flavor, using social media. And then, of course, always take a look at the competition. Make sure that you improve marketing intelligence and decisions by looking at what your competition is doing. You can go ahead and try to combine images and videos, but if you see that newer fads are working, like something like TikTok, where they have like 7 short-second videos, maybe you could implement that into your plays as well. So make sure that you take a look at what's working for other people, but don't try to copy them right away, but make sure that you're not just stagnating on your content. And then, of course, localization was what we talked about earlier, but localization is just making it more localized to the vicinity. This means that if the vicinity you're targeting is in a different language than the one you created your stuff in, make sure you account for that and they can change it that way. And then, of course, always learn about just your consumer base and how people can be more interested in your products. And then, of course, as a reiteration, make sure that you use your social media to distribute your blogs and other content and your website as well. So again, social media networks are a way that we could go ahead and drive more traffic to our business. And let me see. Great. We've seen a few of these before, but there's a few. I'll go ahead and grab that link after the video here. But again, what we're going to go through here is just a few social media pages that we've already seen in DM150. But there's just going to be a way that we can use these to boost our reputation. Of course, make sure that Facebook is used as kind of a content distribution platform. You can make really long posts on Facebook. You can have a lot more information and control over website page, or excuse me, you can make Facebook business pages on Facebook and have them link back to your website. Facebook is a bit larger with what you could do with it. And the good thing about it is it's geared towards kind of everyone, because I believe majority of people have a Facebook. LinkedIn, again, is a way that we can get a bit more professional about it. It's a bit more like professionalism for Facebook. We've already seen a lot of these, but again, this can help you get into groups or businesses that agree with you, see experts in the industry. And then, of course, if you look at the bottom of these two Facebook and LinkedIn posts, the very bottom always says to link back to your website on your post. So the main thing I want to get across here is use these social media platforms as a way to increase the amount of backlinks to your website by linking to them in the posts there. Google Plus is a nice way to go ahead and use the Google My Business. And if we forgot what exactly is Google My Business, well, if we look up something online and we see this little square box right here, this is Google My Business. We could see that we get the information about them. If we click on this guy, we get all the information such as their address, hours, their options, menus, and so forth. So Google My Business is a nice way to reach people in a very easy fashion. You can also link your website on Google My Business. Twitter, again, can be similar to Facebook with a bit of a different twist on things, maybe shorter posts. Link back to your website again. And then, of course, use each of these to go ahead and, Pinterest can be used for images. If you're a photography website, that's very helpful. And then, of course, you can follow boards on Pinterest to see which individuals are following your type of industry. YouTube, it will be nice if you're doing stuff that is very hands-on and involved. I would say maybe if you're running a construction company, there's nothing wrong with making a YouTube channel and setting up a camera and just recording what you're, of course, with the permission of whichever you're working with. But you could really just go ahead and just make projects and stuff on your free time, and then record it and then upload it to your YouTube, and then have a link back to your main website there as well. Yelp is always helpful for going ahead and attracting more customers with reviews and testimonials. And you can also do some special promotions on Yelp. But if you see right at the bottom again, you're going to include links back to your website. So there's actually not a very in-depth or intuitive way to go about boosting your SEO by using social media platforms. And we kind of went through this chapter to make this distinction that social media is as kind of its own beast in its own way. There's a lot of ins and outs and intuitiveness with social media. And I would say that while it's very important, the main aspect of social media is to help leverage your website. And the reason why it's that is that if you have your own website, you just kind of step out of your own zone a bit more. It's kind of your personal brand and idea, and you don't need to be reliant on other items there. So I would say from DM150 and DM160, the main takeaway here is to make sure that you use as many tools as you would like, but always be creating a website. I would say definitely have your own personal website, and then use social media with all of the techniques we learned, with all the different engagements and branding and stuff like that, to help link it back to that website to boost it up even more, because your website's going to be kind of the crucible of your business there. Great. So I just went through quite a bit in a short amount of time, and this is a bit of a rehash of DM150.